And the sound effects were very oh, what the heck was that? Okay, I'm glad it was game over because I don't think I would have been able to beat that thing. Let's see how low we can get without crashing. DeepSeek V4 has been released. Basically, suddenly, without warning, this model just appeared on Hugging Face, and then folks started talking about it, and then there was an official DeepSeek announcement on their X account. Announcement, I should say. I apologize. I am very excited to test this. Now, something very exciting initially, just to take a quick look at, is the page we're seeing right here is Hugging Face. For those of you who are perhaps not as familiar with open source or local AI, this is essentially a place where model weights can be uploaded, meaning that anyone with the computational horsepower can actually download this model and run it locally on their own device without internet access or anything like that. So the interesting thing about this model, beyond just the fact that pretty much everyone knows the name DeepSeek who is adjacent to the tech world, is that this is open sourced at the same time that it was released. Now, personally, I do not have a machine that is capable of running the DeepSeek V4 Pro model, which for today's video we are going to be solely focused on testing, but I do want to initially start this out just by mentioning the existence of these things, because for those of us who are interested in local AI, the Flash model coming in at 158 billion parameters is a fantastic candidate for hobbyist/enthusiast level setup. So for today's video, we're going to be testing the newly released DeepSeek V4 Pro, and we're going to take a quick look at some of the interesting things of note for this model. Then of course, we're just going to jump in and start testing it through a custom little web chat interface that I whipped up for this test, as well as OpenCode, and we'll test some agentic coding things and stuff like that. So let's get into it. Also, do feel free to subscribe. I want to hit 100K so I can get that plaque. So let's take our first look at today's model that we're going to be meeting, which is the DeepSeek V4 Pro model. Now, they do mention this is a preview release, but for all intents and purposes, the model is here and we can actually play with it. So first and foremost, some things that I am going to gloss over, but I'm not going to gloss over them without at least mentioning them. For those interested in more of the lowdown tech specs, a lot of these are things that are pretty interesting and talked about recently or over the course of the past, since whenever these had come out, as hypothesized as being a part of this model. So these are specific things right here that are highlighted that folks perhaps with a more technical interest in some of the underlying functionality of this stuff may be very interested in looking at. But for today's video, we are just basically doing a fun and light test, so we're going to be focused more on actually playing with the model than what resides beneath. But with that, we can see right here that this model, for its size, and we are focused on the Pro model right here, this is a 1.6 trillion parameter total model. It is a mixture of experts model with 49 billion parameters active and a context length of 1 million, which is quite a long context length. So all of these specs, well, mainly the 1 million context length is very interesting. And I have to stop myself from just focusing on this Flash model because this is very exciting for somewhat reasonable local setups. But for now, we're just going to focus on V4. This announcement post that we're looking at now was just, I followed a hyperlink on the DeepSeek homepage and it brought me here, and then the browser is just translating this from Chinese to English, so just keep that in mind when we look at this. But the main point here is to take a look at this benchmark JPEG. Now, I personally never pay too much mind to the benchmarks because I just like to test the models and see how they perform, but we see here that this is being compared to, although the older version of Opus, which is 4.6, we're now on 4.7, and then the older version of GPT, which is 5.4, we're now on 5.5, but I can't excuse this one in specific, being that this did just come out like 12 hours ago, so that's fair. And we can see against Gemini 3.1 Pro High as well, this is pretty comparable to these and even beating them in some specific benchmarks here. And again, I don't pay too much mind to this, but it's just very interesting to see. And if this does truly stack up in terms of the performance outlined here in this benchmark, things could be very interesting. Now, another chart here that I do find pretty interesting because it is shown against a previous iteration of DeepSeek, which was V3.2, is that V4, both versions that have been released under Preview, Pro, and Flash, are both significantly more efficient to run from like an energy efficiency standpoint almost, I suppose could be said, as the computational cost and memory of DeepSeek V4 versus DeepSeek V3.2. We can see the V4 models are significantly lower in terms of that cost, so that's always nice to see as well. And that was something that GPT 5.5 did have a big improvement with, was its ability to perform tasks with significantly fewer tokens needed. That was nice to have. Now, for some specific information just in terms of pricing and some other technical information, we see the maximum output length is 384K, which seems fairly long, but more importantly, price. We see that in the most expensive specific scenario for V4 Pro, 1 million input tokens would be $1.74, and 1 million output tokens would be $3.48. To put that into perspective, and because cost is definitely a consideration, as most folks are not going to be able to run this big model on their local system, I believe the newly released 5.5 that did just come out about 12 hours ago was $5 per million input tokens and then $30 per million output tokens, and that is the GPT 5.5. Really, the next step here, I think, is to just actually begin playing with this model. There's obviously so much to talk about here in terms of like technical things, and then it being open source and there being a smaller version that can be run locally, but I want to try to keep the introduction somewhat concise, even given the weight of this release. Now, we can see here, just to clarify, that I am using the proper version of this model. I have topped up a balance here to use the API, and we can see that just in my initial testing, I have used DeepSeek V4 Pro, so that is the specific model that is being used for today's testing. So with that, our first test is going to be the Browser OS test version 2.5, and I do have the benefit of having just tested GPT 5.5 on its heavy thinking mode, so those results are fresh in my mind as well, so I'll have some level of comparison, though this isn't a specific comparison video, and the specific test here is a Browser OS with 5 applications, 2 of which must be 3D games, and one of those 3D games must be a simple Grand Theft Auto clone. It needs to have the ability to change the wallpaper, and then a special feature that it decides on and implements in and of itself. We can see here this is currently thinking, as we do have the thinking toggle enabled, as well as the effort level being set to max. So we'll allow this to run through its chain of thought, and then it will inevitably begin generating code, and we'll be able to take our first look at a DeepSeek V4 result, which is pretty exciting. All right, and in 2,700 lines of code, here's our DeepSeek V4 WebOS. Okay, on first glance, I don't have too much to say. I don't see anything that totally blows me away, but I will say this icon set is rather different comparatively to things I've seen before. So now let's check the unwritten test. Is there a right click? Okay, there is a right click. That is nice to see. Again, it's not specifically denoted in the prompt, but it's nice to see if the model chooses to include it or not. Next up, we do have a clock with the correct time in my locale. To be honest with you, I thought it was much later than that, so that's good. And then we have a start menu with the Windows quadrant, which we did also see with the GPT 5.5 result from earlier today, which is just funny to see. And then we have some nice hover effects on the icons and things. So let's just start top down, of course, with our GTA clone. First and foremost, this is a nice GTA clone. Interesting. We do have, this almost looks like a New York City, I don't know how I gathered that from the sparse, non-textured buildings. But we have trees, we have grid-like street, we have an NPC car that is seemingly spawned inside of a building, and the mesh colliders are causing it to behave oddly. Okay, but we do have mesh colliders. This is honestly it's pretty similar to the 5.5 result. It's not as interactive because the 5.5 result actually had a wanted system and some pickups and things, though I find the most odd thing about the recent GTA clones really to be that the Qwen 3.627B model did the best one in the Browser OS, which was weird. But still, this is not bad. Some of the steering is funky. Hey there. Oh, wow. Okay. Can we full screen? We can full screen, and that looks nice. Can we minimize to the taskbar? And can we reopen? Good, and it's in the same location. So overall, a functional first result and something I'm happy to see. Next up, our second 3D game, which we don't specifically tell it what it needs to be. Okay, Space Shooter. This is a stretch to call this 3D, but I do see some level of perhaps depth to the background, and it does seem like we did die. Okay, so let's try this once more. Ah, okay. I think I get it. It's possible I don't get it. Okay, yeah. All right. Next up, we have our calculator with the abacus icon. Uh-oh. See, now that's not good. Oh, we can resize. So unfortunately, our calculator does not seem to have any buttons, which would prevent us from being able to calculate, but that's all right. Notepad. Interesting. The notepad's not loading either. Okay. Terminal. Terminal is not loading either. And File Explorer is not. Let me refresh desktop. Okay. Let's do change wallpaper. Good, so that brings up our wallpaper picker. And we do have gradient wallpapers. I kind of like the abstract one. Look at that movement. That's kind of cool. I've not seen that before, and I like it. I mean, it would be distracting for like a real computer. I'd probably go with a Midnight. However, classic. This is like spot on, like classic green, and I like that as well. But abstract is cool. Now, the big issue was that we did have some issues when actually trying to look at our calculator, notepad, terminal, and file explorer. So let's see if there are any problems. So we do have some potential items to fix, and honestly, because just sending that here within this web chat interface would make it regenerate the entire script, this may be a good time to hop into OpenCode and actually have this do some work in here. Now, I noticed this thing does think a lot, and what I mean by that is it will think and then it will be like, but wait, also, wait, also. The good thing is, as long as it breaks out of that when it actually comes to a decision that it should just begin writing the code, it's fine behavior. It's just interesting to see, something I noticed a lot with local Quen models as well. Okay, I don't know if it fixed it, but I'm getting this message here, which somewhat concerns me, but they do have specific documentation on how to properly implement this in with the OpenCode, and I just copy pasted that in the OpenCode config. So I'm just going to try to refresh. So I'm just going to refresh it. Good. And we do now have our terminal working. Let's just try where we left off with our calculator. Beautiful. 54 times 65. It's 3,510. Oh. Okay. Good. That works. Notepad. I'll save terminal for last. Notepad. I don't know where that came from. It is late. I've been up, All right. That works. File Explorer. Very good. This is an interesting. This did put fake like save and game data inside this. I saw this as well with, I think it was GPT 5.5, but it might have been Quen 3.6 27B. There have been a lot of models out lately. That was a good File Explorer. This terminal can control the entire OS. Try about. All right. That looks good. I get to change this background. Just like anything. Okay, good. That's much better. Terminal provides complete control over the GUI environment. Window move app XY. That's just ridiculous. All right, let's open calculator. Yeah. Okay, so window move. Very good. That did work once I spelled calculator correctly. All right, so that's an interesting feature. Not something I've ever seen before. That's cool to see. Shut down. All right. Overall, not bad. We did get it to fix the issues through OpenCode as well. So this was almost like a hybrid test of just a one-shot just from this little chat UI, and then also through OpenCode to fix some issues we noticed. Now, you may be wondering, like, why are you using this vibe-coded web chat? The reason for this is because the DeepSeek web chat does not specifically say what model identifier it is, and though I would imagine, oh, you can see my my command history, search history there. Though I would imagine it's probably serving the new model, I just need to be 100% sure and actually doing a video that is designed to showcase this model to folks. So that is why I'm specifically doing this, but we will also use OpenCode for a lot of stuff as well. So I'm going to give it the beautiful static subway scene test where it creates the beautiful static subway scene, the ability to move around it using WASD, and then a brightness slider to make it either brighter or darker. And then at the conclusion of this result, we will then have it turn this map that it generates into a cool low poly or some form of FPS. All right, let's take a look at our static subway generation test. Okay, click to explore, WASD to move. All right, so we're definitely going to have some form of console issue here, and I am happy that I did not just immediately start the follow-up prompt to turn this into some form of like beat 'em up game. So let's take a look and see what specific errors we have. Oh, okay. So I'm going to just allow it to, from within OpenCode, fix the issues that were preventing the subway station scene from loading, because once it does this, I will want to send the follow-up prompt to do something additionally with the map that was generated as the subway scene, so it'll be better to just do this from within OpenCode, I think. Now, I'm not 100% sure how much concurrency allocation I'm going to get through the API calls, meaning like if I send another request to it just through this web chat interface, is it going to rate limit me or not? I would guess it's not going to, so being that this does take a little bit of time to actually think and then produce results. I think I'm going to start a second test just from within the web chat interface simultaneously while OpenCode is fixing our subway static scene. It does seem like OpenCode has fixed our subway station scene, and indeed it has. All right, awesome. Let's click to explore. Okay, we have quite a tunnel aesthetic. You know, this isn't half bad at all. We do have an arched ceiling, and something interesting that I don't know if I've ever seen before is the inclusion of this vending machine. We have the tracks, we do have the yellow do not cross barrier, we have individual tiles that are detailed here, as well as another vending machine and another set of tracks over there. Now I noticed the movement is inverted, so instead of pressing W to go forward, I have to press S, which, you know, is okay. Okay, we have stairs. There are no mesh colliders on them, but that is okay. It is a sterile result. Not the best I've seen, but also not the worst. And if we press the spacebar, we just go higher and higher with the camera view, so that's cool to see as well. And let's check our brightness toggle. Ooh, it's like nighttime subway. That's actually kind of good. I almost like the darker better now that I actually have the option to make it significantly brighter. Interesting. So now I'm going to swap this into plan mode, and let's just give it a follow-up to use this map for something. So I'm giving it a really simple follow-up, and I have put it in plan mode saying turn this into a commuter beat-em-up sim with arcade mechanics, humanoid models with rigging and movement, and a fun vibe. So we'll see what it does here, and I would imagine it will probably have some follow-up questions for us to answer, but it may very well not. All right, combat style. No, I do not want a side-scrolling. I want a 3D arena brawler. So I know some folks were upset that I was not able to include the flight combat simulator test in the GPT-5 result video, so let's run it here and see how well DeepSeek V4 is able to handle it. So here is our flight combat simulator result. First and foremost, I like what I'm seeing. Okay, this looks so weird because this is actually the plane selection screen, and it's showing us the 3 planes that we can choose from. I do see some sparsely scattered buildings and a ground terrain. Oh, look at the way they have little hover effects when you hover over the specific one. All right, this is cool on first glance. I will say this is one of the more impressive start screens that I've seen. Let's just start off with the fighter jet and see. Okay, so we have mouse movement. Interesting little model. And we do have space ammunition. This is very difficult to control. Just the way that the mouse and keyboard controls are intertwined. That was actually kind of a cool flip. This has a very like military operation vibe to it, I guess could be said. Now, I don't see any enemies. Let's see how low we can get without crashing. Okay, let's try our propeller plane. All right, it does have a spinning propeller, but the plane models leave a bit to be desired, I would say. One of the big issues I'm seeing here is none of the enemies are actually visible. The clouds do look good, and it did at least try to make some detailed terrain where we have the airstrip and things like that. Overall, though, this is... it's kind of a little basic, I suppose, comparatively to what I would have expected. We do have autopilot, that's cool. Then the final thing we have is a stealth jet. Okay, and then still no enemies that I see, though. And it's possible, sometimes in editing, I'll look back at something and see it then and be like, oh my god, how did I miss that? That is possibly the case here as well. But on first glance, I don't see any enemies. So overall, an attempt, but a very basic one, I would have to say. Now, our subway result has actually been written. It is still like, it's looking over the code now to see, but I kind of, like, I'm impatient, so I just want to do a refresh pull, as they say on YouTube. Okay, and I'm now going to inevitably allow this to continue looking through the code because unfortunately it's not working right here. So we'll give that a little more time, and in the meantime, we'll try something else. So I've been doing a bit of research as there has been an issue that's been happening in OpenCode where it's just saying like the reasoning content in the thinking mode must be passed back to the API. So I checked the GitHub for OpenCode, and then I found a link to this specific article here, which apparently has a different configuration to paste into the OpenCode config, and this will apparently solve the issue. So I am going to try that now before I do anything additional in terms of testing this. So I'm testing it again just with the specific fix that was outlined in this linked post that I found through the GitHub issues for OpenCode having problems with DeepSeek. I will hopefully find that solves it, but we'll report back. Basically, if it continues to work now without a hitch, then that did solve it, and it's just something to make note of, as this is a brand new release, so hiccups like this are to be expected, especially in third-party tools like OpenCode. All right, apparently our fix has been applied, so perfect, good. That's exactly what I wanted to see. All right, we do have humans, humanoids. I'm going to say the actual rigged animations of these characters are pretty cool. Now, the camera is... okay, so they just slink down to the ground there, which is interesting. The camera is actually... I don't remember what I was going to say. That's all right. Oh, the camera is movable by the mouse. You know what? I like this. I'm satisfied with this. I very much do like the effects of these humanoid models. We can actually see, because they're low poly, like... Oh, wave 1, game over. Okay, so it seems like there's only one wave. Let me refresh this. Click to play. So the walking animations and things are actually pretty well done. The arms move, the legs move, and there are different like subsections of the legs that are moving when we walk, which is pretty good to see. It's an interesting take. 3x combo. All right. Here we have wave 2. And it does have some particle effects, and the combo thing is kind of like an arcade effect as well. I will say that was a pretty quick job that it did fixing this, so hopefully that configuration fix for OpenCode is actually good. Now, being that we have some like bandwidth allocated here, I'm just going to say this whole game is jank. Make it way better. And we'll see what happens. So our subway station game has been modified with some of the critiques filled in. Okay, the cameras, okay, definitely better effects. The camera's a little odd to move, but we have sound effects and hit effects when people take damage. The arcade sound implementation is quite spot on. Oh yeah, okay, good. That was actually like a good combo there. Oh, we still have a ton of health. The camera is odd. I should have just done all WASD. That is on me. Oh, okay, wave 2. and right click is to kick. Look at that. All right. Good. Are we going to hit wave 3? Yes. All right. I do like the animations in terms of the rigging on the humans. And game over. And the sound effects were very, very well. Oh, what the heck was that? Okay, I'm glad it was game over because I don't think I would have been able to beat that thing. All right. So overall, the sound effects were absolutely spot on in terms of their implementation. I'm going to just refresh this so that it doesn't keep going. That was a significant improvement just in arcadeness, I guess could be said. Now, I also want to try the ship combat simulator, and not necessarily even for the ship combat, but I always like to see the way the models go about implementing realistic water as well as the ship models and whether or not they bob up and down with the current or the waves, if they do or not. So it'll be interesting just to see how it handles this thought for so long, and it does actually have something here. The reason I opened this before even speaking is because the preview just showed a blank white screen, so I was worried something may have gone amiss. Now, we're noticing one specific issue right here, which is that the actual ship model is unfortunately not rendered on top of the water like it should be, but I have to say, from what I'm seeing in this water effects, these are pretty nicely done. So I think the thing to do is just basically have OpenCode take a stab at this, as I am still waiting for the Windows XP application result. So we'll try it. So I've just told it that the ship is appearing beneath the water in this game, fix it, and it is in a directory with only this specific script, so we'll completely understand as soon as it takes a look at the script. So hypothetically, we have a fixed result. This was just through OpenCode. It said there was an offset issue with the ship, which is of course the case, but unfortunately, it didn't properly fix it here. So, all right. The water looks good though. So I've seen some things that do indicate to me that this model is being served in the expert mode in this web chat interface. So I'm giving it the same exact test that I've given GPT 5.5 earlier today, where I'm telling it that I needed to create a simple Hello World exe program that will be run on a Windows XP laptop. When opened, the program should say hello from DeepSeek. Now, we'll have to see exactly how it goes about doing this, as this is being run in this web interface because it has DeepThink and search enabled, so I feel like it has the best possible chance of doing it here, just within their own serving infrastructure, I guess could be said. So it'll be interesting nonetheless to see if it's capable of actually doing this. And then if it is, then we can up the ante as we did in the GPT test earlier and make it make a more complicated program. So unfortunately, in the meantime, the Windows XP application result, I just don't think this is going to be happening, as I actually had to manually click continue. And to be honest with you, I'm worried I'm going to get rate limited in some form or another if I actually continue trying to do this. So again, this was a more difficult test that I'd first done just with the GPT-5 test earlier today. I'm going to probably hold off on doing that with DeepSeek. So I've swapped it to plan mode in OpenCode, and I'm giving it the C++ self-contained skateboard script test. This is the variation of this where it has to make it a late 90s California boardwalk style aesthetic. So it's in plan mode here. It may have some follow-up questions for us as well to answer. Something I did like to see is that before it even really started thinking too much about how it's going to go about creating this game in terms of like graphical elements, style, and stuff, it just immediately went to see what specific dependencies and compilers and things the system had to actually be able to build this with what specific resource. So I liked seeing that, and now it's thinking through the actual game logic and game aesthetic and things of that sort. Alright, and we have a good looking plan, so I'm just going to swap it to build mode. It asked me basically if I have any specific things I want, but if not, it will go ahead and just use what it opts to be the best, which I'm totally fine with, so I'm going to tell it just build it out now. So it's generated the script, and it did compile without errors, but I noticed, kind of in the way we noticed somewhat, that before generating a coding result, it would think a lot and be like, okay, now I'm going to generate. But wait, also this, it's almost doing this after it's generated the script, where it's going over like the script very intricately, and then finding additional things that it wants to fix, fixing them, and then being like, oh, I also noticed in the update method I should fix this. And that's been going on for quite a while now. So I almost kind of want to just try running it, but I'm gonna wait. But also at the same time, this has been doing this for a lot. Okay, let me recompile and check. So hopefully we're getting closer. All right, I have become a little impatient. This is getting complicated. Okay, good. At least the model has as well. This looks sick. Well, okay, give me a second to kind of amend my initial statement, but I do have to say the humanoids look kind of cool. There's a lot of them, and they're all dressed in these same exact outfits, which is a little scary, though I'm going to say the actual buildings here on the boardwalk. Oh, yep, okay. That was weird. We had like an infinite fall, but it seemed to have fixed itself. I'm noticing significant potential here. I will say I wasn't expecting, I don't know what I was expecting. Obviously the skater model's a little, it seems like the legs are placed at the same height as the arms, but we have some particle effects, and so, all right, maybe I should just let it continue to work. But that was promising, and now I feel a little more comfortable in continuing to wait. My impatience has lessened. And in the meantime, as this will take quite a little bit of time, I am going to do the 3D printer simulation test just through the DeepSeek web chat interface right here. Now again, I have it on decent authority that this is very likely the new variation of the model. I can't 100% confirm that, being that there is no specific model slug or name here showing what model is being used, but I do believe it is the new one, so we'll try it here. Something else I want to do just to see is actually run the same 3D printer test from this little vibe coded chat interface with thinking disabled, just so it immediately starts generating the script instead of a chain of thought prior to the generation. So in the meantime, while the skate game is still going, we did get our 3D printer simulation results from the web chat interface, and this looks very, very good on first glance. We have a spool holder, or a filament holder, a filament spool holder with an actual connection going to the extruder, which is nice to see. This does look like a good Core XY printer. Everything here seems pretty decent in terms of not being too dark and very visible, so let's just start. Okay, not the most realistic thing I've seen, but I will note the actual connection between the spool and the nozzle is staying. Is the nozzle rotating? Okay, it isn't. I've seen that like once, and it's something I check now consistently because I was impressed with it. I have to say, so the bed is moving down, and the way the bed is moving down in steps is kind of cool, but this is a more simplified version of this where it's kind of just pancaking layers on top of one another, which sometimes is a thing we see. So let's check our... I thought I'd selected triangle, and I was like, what? Let's check our circle. Okay. Movement seems all right. The nozzle is moving in the correct direction, like the correct movement that would make a circle. And then finally, let's try our triangle. Good, and the nozzle is moving as well in the correct orientation that would create this triangle. Oh wow, that was very high speed. Now, I did also run this without thinking enabled here in this little vibe-coded web chat interface, so this just immediately spit the script out without any thinking, and I want to do just a comparison to see how they differ. So here's the non-thinking enabled 3D printer simulation result. Okay, I feel like this is a pretty good contrast and difference in terms of what we saw with thinking enabled from the web interface, and again, assuming this is the new model, I'm fairly certain it is, but that's why most of the tests have not been through the actual chat.deepseek.com, but this definitely looks like a non-thinking version of that result. It is just stacking these in a pancake fashion. The nozzle, I don't know if, yeah, okay, it's just going like back and forth. So this is definitely significantly less capable than what it would have been had thinking been enabled. I would go out on a limb to say, but I did want to just do a test without it to see what the result we received was like. All right, finally, our fully completed C++ skate game has been finished as denoted by the model. So let's just open it and run here. Okay, again, it's pretty similar to what we had seen when we tried running this when I became impatient. And it still unfortunately just has some glitches. It's just like the pieces are there, they're just not necessarily put in the right spot. I guess literally and metaphorically could be said. Like, these buildings are actually not bad. I like the way they look. They have like a very beach boardwalk aesthetic, but just the stuff like falling through the map and then the weirdness of the skater is letting this down a bit. But I would say overall, it has potential. It's just, like I said, not 100% there. But this is a preview model, so keep that in mind. So I'm giving this just from within build mode in OpenCode a front-end UI design test, as I want to see how it does in this. This is not something we've really explored yet, where it needs to build an interactive AI product analytic dashboard for a fictional SaaS company, and then there's a bunch of individual items here denoted, but really we just want to see if it makes a good-looking, aesthetically pleasing front end. Alright, it's going in one of its like post-result thinking loops again, where it just really with a fine-tooth comb goes through every single snippet of code, though for a single static front-end web design test, I would say that it's good enough to look at, and it absolutely is. All right, you know what? I like this. I think this is well done. It's clean. It's done a nice job properly capturing the analytics dashboard look. This looks like a proper front end. Okay, except for that. Is that a... Okay, it is a scroll bar. So... This looks like a proper front-end billing process for the $842,000 invoice. New model, GPT-4o Advanced deployed to production. We have warnings. We have some API calls by specific model, which is pretty cool as well, and all of these are real models. Monthly revenue is up. API calls are up and down. We even have a fake name here, and that's our enterprise plan. Does the search bar actually work? GPT. Okay, no, it doesn't, but that's okay. It looks good. Okay, and it changes some of these specific lines here when we do change the date scale there, which is good. Models, and again, this is not a lot of this is filled in as it is just a static front end for a good looking UI, but I will say, I'm pleased with this result. So probably the final thing we're going to be doing is of course the drum kit simulation test, which is probably one of my favorite tests at this point, where it needs to create a 3D or 2.5D photorealistic drum kit, and then we can play it with the keyboard, but also this is the test that includes the denotion of the autoplay feature, where it needs to give us 4 specific styles of drum track that we can select from and it will autoplay. Now I did also run this drum kit simulation test from within my specific web UI, which we know for sure is using the new DeepSeek model, as well as the chat.deepseek web UI, where we're not 100% sure, but we're likely thinking it is. And it's interesting to compare the results. So, okay, here's what we got from the chat.deepseek.com. The models look good. I will say, actually, this specific, what would this be, the hi-hat? Yeah, the hi-hat model right here is probably one of the better ones I've seen. With that, the actual like stands are also probably one of the better models I've seen done there. Let's see. Yep, that hits. All right. Phil Collins test is very Phil Collins doable. That sounds like Anita Ward, Ring My Bell. There's like a sound in that song that sounds very similar to that. I do like the effects. All right, let's try our autoplay. Whoa, what? Wait for it. All right, jazz swing. And hip hop. Oh, okay, that is good. Listen to that. That's kind of hard. Press subscribe or feast that. No, I'm kidding. I'm not gonna do that. But that last one, the hip hop one, that was pretty hard. And again, this was a result done just through the web chat interface right here. It's like 3:30 in the morning, so if anyone heard that, they're gonna be like, oh. And we're going to allow this to run as well, just with the little vibe coded web chat, which is for sure using V4 Pro. So sadly, we received a network error here when I was trying to wait for the drum kit simulation test, but being that we did get one from the web interface here, which I am pretty sure is the new model with expert selected, I think that's probably going to wrap this up. And overall, I'm having a tough time with the culmination of my thoughts with this. I will say it is a preview model, and it definitely does feel like a preview model, I guess could be said. Really, the biggest thing is none of the results really stood out to me as mind-blowing, and overall it was satisfactory. Everything was done sufficiently, but I also think DeepSeek carries such like a cachet to the name that folks are going to be like waiting for the original like DeepSeek R1 effect. And I don't know that that's going to be the case here, especially because we have so many more open source models now that are actually properly contending. Whereas back then a 671B model that just dropped and was like really performant was very, very different in that time span. So like the ship combat simulator, it didn't really spawn above the water, and I tried having it fix it in OpenCode, and unfortunately it just was not really possible. Our WebOS was satisfactory, but there was an initial error that needed to be fixed in OpenCode. But once that was fixed, I mean, aside from these weird little drifting cars, the GTA clone was nicely done. It had buildings, the lighting was good, the shadows and everything like that. This was acceptable there. Our subway station, which eventually turned into this little arcade beat 'em up style game, this was probably my favorite result in the whole thing. And you know, it it had some promise like that. I liked. This was good. And again, we have to remember this model's open weight, so anyone can actually, I must have moved that result. Anyone can actually hypothetically download and run this on their own system. Now, 99.9% of the population would not have a system that would be able to run this Pro version. However, the Lite version or Flash, whichever the name was, is something that is going to be very exciting for hobbyist level local setups. The drum kit sim was all right. The actual, like, the bass drum, that really hit. We had the 3D printer simulation as well, and this was one that I believe was run through the chat.deepseek, the web chat. We also, though, did one with thinking off, and it was like significantly less intricate, but it was good to see a side-by-side or head-to-head comparison. Additionally to that, yes, this was the thinking off 3D printer. The front-end dashboard here was fine. This was aesthetically pleasing and what one would expect. Our plane simulator had some promise with like the terrain and the maps and things like that, but unfortunately this was just another one where I think I was expecting a little more polish to it, though this was just a basically zero shot result being run through a web chat. Then finally our skate game, which I opened the wrong thing here. Our skate game was promising because the actual buildings that were drawn here in this boardwalk aesthetic, there were tons of humanoids as well, and some of the trick animations and just the arcade aesthetic to this actually seemed like it was going to be potentially good. The way it drew these buildings here in the front of the beach and things like that was not bad and was somewhat promising. Again, this is just a result that it does feel like a preview result. So I'm interested to see where this evolves in terms of like additional things. And I'm also very interested in seeing other folks' initial feedback and experience with this model, as I am just one person. And I know a lot of content creators like to speak very authoritatively about their views and things like that, but this is just one individual's experience in testing this model genuinely as it just came out about 3 hours ago. So that is probably going to conclude our first look and test of the DeepSeek V4 model, which is crazy and something that I am very excited to say. Now, of course, we do also have a DeepSeek V4 Flash model, which is something that I'm very interested in testing locally on this specific Mac Studio that is being used right here. Now, a question folks I would assume are going to have is, how much did the entirety of this test cost? So we can see that that was $3.68 for everything that was done in today's testing, and there was a lot of open code back and forth and things like that. So one of the biggest things to take away from this is the pricing for this model is significantly cheaper than other models it is contending with, like the GPTs and the Opuses and things of the sort. So this could definitely be a model that fits into a workflow where you offload some of the lower level work to this for significantly cheaper, can handle long contexts, and then you use the GPT-5 for specialized niche things like a Windows XP app or something like that. That is going to conclude our first look and test of the newly released and largest ever open source model release, the DeepSeek V4 Pro. I will say the base models being released is also really awesome. I didn't really touch upon that, but it's something good to know. So if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments, and thanks for watching.